afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2024 Big History Exhibition. Thank you all for making the time to come together today to celebrate our program and learn more about the story of the universe as we now know it. Take a moment and look at the people sitting beside you. How do you relate to them? Are they your family? Friends? Maybe you've never even met them before. Whatever the case, just by being around each other and experiencing this event together, you form a bond. No matter how small it is, it's there. Bonds happen all around us at every scale. From elementary particles and atoms bonding together to create the physical matter of our world, to billions and billions of stars bonding together to create the galaxy we find ourselves embedded in right now. The universe is such a complex place, and there's so many ways to view it. However, I find being able to look at our own lives and then try to connect it to how the universe evolves can be helpful. So let me give you a question to think about. What kind of bonds do you make for your everyday life, and how do those bonds connect to the creative process of our universe as a whole? To understand how we create bonds, we must first understand ourselves. To understand ourselves, we must first understand how we came to be the way we are. As we look back into the cosmic past, we can see a universe with just the right conditions to bring forth life and eventually conscious and social beings such as ourselves. When we look back into human history, we can see how bonding facilitated our evolutionary success. When we're able to understand that, we can then become more prepared to meet the demands of our present, which will then help us to prepare for our best future. We've learned since elementary school that history is taught so we don't repeat the past mistakes. Maria Montessori was a strong believer in preparing future generations to recognize themselves as members of one human family with a shared destiny, so that warfare and division of the past would not be repeated. She once said, "Peace is what every human being is craving for, and it can be brought about by the humanity through the child." By the end of this event, you'll see how Community Montessori works to make sure that every child and teen within the school has a real understanding of what it's like to connect our learning to the universe. If we could all do that and start thinking about the bigger picture, then we as a global society could bond through this experience and participate in the ongoing creative development of the universe. What we're hoping to provide you with today is a deeper understanding of what the big history of our universe is. Because when you understand that, you'll understand the concept of relationships and the importance of big schemes that the universe has planned. This is why big history is so important to the Montessori mission, because we work to see the human population as a diverse group united together under one nation. Being able to understand how human life impacts the world and the universe around us, we can then begin to understand our individual purpose as well as the cosmic task of our species. As Montessorians, our mission is to bring the human body, mind, and soul back to the cosmological. Understanding our big history can guide us to the entire Earth community into a more peaceful and prosperous future. Without any further ado, please allow us to tell you an epic story of how our universe has transformed itself over and over again by forming bonds and deepening relationships over 14 billion years.
It all started with nothing and something. It started before now existed, before an always or a never. Then, something we can measure. It first started with space. This space rapidly inflated, containing everything, every bit of matter, every fundamental force, and all of the parts of those fundamental forces, including gravity. If this small force of gravity were even a bit weaker or a bit more powerful, space itself would either collapse in on itself or rip itself apart. Then, end of story. This, however, did not happen. Instead, stuff, matter formed. This matter almost instantaneously, one in its energetic collisions over antimatter. In these collisions, protons, neutrons, electrons were all created. And they were bound together and made up of smaller particles known as quarks. And these quarks were held together and bonded together, and bonded together still today via the strong nuclear force contained within themselves. In these first few moments of the universe, we see bonding, forming, and creating with these quarks, with these flashes of creativity. With each new, seemingly creative event driven by the forces of the universe itself. Cosmic purpose, almost. These atoms or quarks were the most basic form they could organize themselves into. The chance of this happening the way it played out, with the laws of physics existing in the same way they do today, was minuscule at best. Truly, how the universe works is a cosmic miracle. Hydrogen, in this explosion of the universe, first formed and then merged together to create helium. Small amounts of lithium and other elements were as well formed, and these most basic possible elements organized on their own, driven by their creative dynamics. Although not as subjective as life or a planet, these elementary bits of matter had already created themselves into something more. They had built what wasn't possible picoseconds or moments before. After this cosmic miracle, the universe expanded even more and faster, and this expansion spread all of the plasma and all of the matter across the universe until it cooled enough to form the cosmic microwave background radiation. This last invisible light from the formation of the universe is sometimes called the baby picture of the universe, and it is how we know this part of the universe's story. This CMBR is the farthest thing that can be seen from anywhere in the universe. And as the universe expands, light must travel farther and longer to reach us. Because of this, the farther something is, the further back in time we are seeing it. This time traveling of sorts allows us to see what has been at the cost of what is. There is no guarantee that even the closest star is still there in its orbit until 4 years later. This great cosmic power allows us as mere humans to see the story and tale of the great cosmic past that we now call cosmology. The remnants of this CMBR created the first stars and galaxies, which takes the universe across the second threshold in this cosmic history. This gas came together closer via gravity into spinning disks looking similar to galaxies today. At the center of these disks was a very hot and dense ball of gas. This ball accreted more and more gas and became hotter, organizing itself into stars and creating a new form of existence that had not been seen before. This ball began fusion and pressure, and from this fusion, prevented the gas from collapsing in on itself and forming a point, a black hole. This star, as we call it, began a process that has not happened since almost 100 million years ago, or before this event. But this fusion did not simply organize for microseconds, but instead for billions of years, and fused all the way up the periodic table to iron. These stars could not create any elements heavier than iron, as iron could not release energy as it is formed, as it is fused. This causes the star to implode under its own weight. However, this implosion fuses iron and passed it into more elements, gold, silver, anything above iron. As this explosion and implosion releases heat, it causes the rest of the star, the remnants, to explode and spread everything of itself across the universe. These elements, as they spread, eventually form around new stars and create new planets. This new form of the planet then will allow the next form of subjectivity on one special rock. The name of it is known as Earth.
It took approximately 10 billion years for the universe to transform itself into a big, complex soup of celestial bodies, with stars and rocks coexisting due to the illustrious force called gravity. Gravity is not just the thing that causes us to come back down after we jump. It is the main instrument in the universe's symphony. It is the most literal way that things bond. It is the thing that keeps it all together and pushes everything where it needs to be for everything to coexist. Gravity causes things to pile up on each other, and that is how everything got more complicated and how tiny specks grew into monumental structures. It's a long process, but over approximately 600 million years, small rocks and grains of dust collided and merged, getting bigger and bigger and bigger until they eventually formed the planets in our solar system. You can see them sometimes when you look out into the night sky, but they just look like stars from here. And some of them are even much bigger than our Earth. It all depends on the positioning of things. The positioning of the universe is our saving grace. It is, for lack of a better word, perfection. These planets and dwarf planets were pulled into an orbit around a star, which we call our sun. It is a relatively unremarkable star compared to others throughout the universe, but it is everything to us. Without it, and our perfect placement away from it, we wouldn't be here. Earth resides in something scientists have coined as the Goldilocks zone, named after the well-known fairy tale. It's located in just the right place away from the sun so that we get perfect temperatures for life to thrive. It's not too hot or not too cold, but just right. Gravity, bonding, naturally pulled the star and the planet together. There's another key piece in this powerful relationship, a celestial body the life of Earth relies on. In its early life, Earth collided with another planet, and that planet's debris floated out into our atmosphere and formed a spherical planet-like structure that would form an orbit around us. We call it the moon. Just like the sun, none of us would be here without the moon. It pulls our tides and regulates our temperatures. Every minute detail is perfect. Despite existing in the Goldilocks zone, Earth wasn't the perfect temperature initially. Upon its inception, Earth was a flaming ball of molten hot gas, seething at a temperature of about 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. It took billions and billions and billions of years for Earth to look anything like it does right now, but from the beginning, the building blocks were in place. Gravity, celestial creativity, and bonding pushed everything together into perfect positions so that something incredible could emerge.
Cosmic bonding is one of the most important relationships throughout the universe. These bonds are what created atoms, stars, galaxies, solar systems, planets, and life. These perfect circumstances all led to the Earth's ability to host single-celled organisms, such as some bacteria and archaea, and it can also host multicellular organisms, like animals, eukaryotes, and fungi. Multicellular organisms are bonded from single-celled organisms. They are completely unable to survive independently. Their only chance of survival is their ability to cooperate with one another. This shows just how important their relationships are with each other. Dinosaurs lived on Earth for roughly 165 million years, until until they were almost completely wiped out due to an asteroid. Their devastating end made a new opening for an opportunity when the atmosphere was sustainable for new aerobic life. Their extinction cleared a path for mammals to start exploiting the resources for themselves. This major disaster to the majority of the dinosaur population was indeed very tragic, but it opened up new possibilities for our planet. It gave us species we had never seen before. That is the beauty of this kind of destruction. You never know what the future species holds. Our ecosystem is a prime example of transforming itself through bonds and relationships. There are two cycles, both of which involve relationships between each other and their environment. The first cycle is the movement of energy. All energy comes from the sun, but how it is moved around or transferred by organisms is what separates them. There are producers that can make their own food. They use the sun as a source of energy, but not all organisms can survive off the sun. So there is a pecking order in which species will feed off of one another or other outside energy sources like plants. The second cycle, which has 3 subcycles, is the movement of materials through environment. We have the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is very important for our ecosystem. It is the element needed to make amino acids that will become proteins. There are certain kinds of bacteria that can actually turn nitrogen, the gas, into a solid, ammonia. Nitrification will soon turn that ammonia into nitrates, which is found in our soil as proteins. Then we have the carbon cycle. Carbon is one of the most important organic materials. It is cycled through an ecosystem through photosynthesis or respiration. During photosynthesis, carbon will be turned into carbon dioxide for energy, but then it is returned to gas during respiration. Last but not least, we have the water cycle. About 71% of our Earth is covered in water. When the sun hits on water as a liquid, it will evaporate. It will go into our atmosphere for transformation as a vapor. Then it will fall from the sky again as snow, rain, or ice. The concept of life is a very big topic, and Threshold 5 is just the beginning of it. It is separated from all the other thresholds because it is the story of our planet, and establishing that beginning is very important. Some people think that life forming on our planet was just a fluke, but that's actually further from the truth than you'd think. A quote from Freeman Dyson states, "The more I examine the universe and the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe, in some sense, must have known we were coming." Yes, there is some randomness within all this, but that is the point. The point is that life is random, and that is why it is so beautiful. It is thought that the universe has a craving to be alive, that it wants to become aware of itself, just as we are. Marie Montessori herself recognized that every organism had its own cosmic task, a purpose, something that is far beyond the basic activities of their existence. The emergence of life brought a new level of consciousness, something we had never seen before. It was the first time we had seen a species communicate with one another on a new level.
After life emerged, language immediately came into play. The language between bonding cells as they send each other chemical signals in order to join together. The language inside of our bodies so our brain communicates so we can move, speak, breathe, and simply exist. Language has been essential to our development as a species and a society. We not only use language as a critical tool for communication and expression, but we use it and advance it in an attempt to understand the world around us. But when you hear the word language, you might just think of English class. Parts of speech, sentence structure, grammar, all that. Those things make human language easier to understand. They make it easier to communicate with other humans. The rules are important. But upon hearing those rules, many proceed to put language in a box. They decide to view it as just a tool. It gets confined to these rules and labeled as just a school subject, and something that is only used by humans. But it's not so black and white. Language is so much more than that in its origin. Language did not begin with humans. Language is defined as a system of communication utilized by a particular community. So I argue that all species use a form of language. Whales through songs and calls, dogs through body language, bees through dance, and ants through pheromones. Whether it's through gestures, facial expressions, sounds, signals, or all of these elements working together, it is communication. It is with this knowledge that we can learn to truly understand language and the other creatures who use it in different and interesting ways. So you may ask, what's unique about humans? Not only do we use language to maintain control and influence in scales and in ways that have not been seen in any other animal, but humans are also the only known species to create written language. We have quite literally drawn pictures, proceeded to give them something to represent, and created whole other aspects aspects of language, reading and writing. This advancement has not only led to the widening of communication across the world, mathematics, and technology, but it is also why we're here before you today. I am speaking the words I have written. These words were birthed by individuals who were alive long ago, and they have been carried and altered throughout human history and passed through generations of progress and change and have been given to you. This is how we, as humans, learn and advance our ways. We do so through community and togetherness. We trade and exchange knowledge, stories, ideas, failures, and successes, all through the use of language. This is called collective learning. The scale and speed of human progress relies on this process. Language allows us to explain our thoughts and emotions in ways that can allow us to realize them and recognize them more fully. This brings forth consciousness, which brings forth the advancement of language and learning, and the cycle continues. We are here because of language. You are here because of language. You are a piece in this mighty linguistic story. So allow us and yourself to express our ideas and beliefs about the universe through the power and the beauty of language.
The last speaker told you how language evolved with the universe and humanity's specific interpretation of it. And I am no different. Really, if the organizers of this event had wanted to, they could probably have squished my topic and the last speaker's topic into one speech, but then there would have been a fight to the death over who got to deliver it, so this would have been set up instead. I'm here to tell you about math, the language we developed to communicate things like prices and amounts, but also the engine that would unlock and jumpstart our evolution into the powerful thinkers we are today. It's impossible to separate mathematics from tool use. Thanks to artifacts like the Ashango bone, we know for a fact that humans were counting as far back as 20,000 years ago. Back then, all that the evolution of math practically meant was that we could keep track of things more easily. But even this simple step into the world of counting was by definition revolutionary. All of a sudden, we essentially had a USB thumb drive for information that we otherwise would need to store in our minds. This newfound security of information that we otherwise allowed us to focus on other things, and the rest is history. Throughout all of our history, we have been learning new things, writing them down, then moving on to the next thing. Curiosity may have killed the cat, but for humans, it was the only reason we got so far. If humans hadn't held in their hearts an instinctual curiosity and drive to learn more together from the very beginning, we would never even be here. All along, math was at the center of it all. What we need to understand, and what really justifies this being its own speech, is that the birth of math was the bridge between the advent of collective learning and the dawn of what we would call civilization. Math unlocked in humans a kind of creative power that allowed us to track how much surplus we had, measure out how much land we would need for different crops, exchange foods for money, maintain a monetary system, establish governments, and along the whole line, keep thinking harder and harder about deeper and deeper things as manual labor began to be less and less necessary, and community members were able to take up specialized jobs like historians or artisans. For the first time, thanks to math, humanity, the universe's extended mind, was able to contemplate its own existence. We used then, and still use math today, to discover and express the primordial laws of nature and understand how we relate to the universe. I remember when I was in my first year down in the biomes, there was always one book that stood out to me and printed on me like no other. I read a lot of similar picture and chapter books in my time in Tundra, but the first Born with a Bang book by Jennifer Morgan really left a mark on me. And I would even go so far as to say it and the other books in the series impacted the way I looked at life in general. From a very young age, I understood the true scope of the universe, and for some reason that didn't scare me. The idea that we as humans are an extension of the universe, wholly connected to it down to the atoms that make up our molecules, really affected me back in the day and still affects me today. As Jennifer Morgan illustrates so beautifully in that series, humanity has never at any point been separate from the universe. Math is the key that let us grow into beings that can truly contemplate that fact. Ever since, we humans have been observing and documenting every little detail we can find, theorizing and experimenting, generating mathematical equations that let us build houses with roofs so tall they seem to tear into the blue of our sky, strap canvas and wood together to mimic the flight of birds, then eventually use those discoveries to build a cannon that would shoot us to that giant white rock in the sky. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's move on from the language of math to the beautiful and terrible things that that language spoke into existence.
Humans used to be strictly hunter-gatherers, with every part of our lives being devoted to the lifestyle. Since all of our food was found in nature, we would migrate as the seasons changed, so that way we could still have our nutrients. During this time, the human population was exceptionally low. After all, more humans would have done more harm than good. We travel in numbers for safety reasons, of course, but you always had to be ready to kick someone out of the group just for there to be enough food to go around. So increasing the population did not really make sense. But the end of our last ice age, about 10,000 years ago, caused rivers to flood, allowing the sediments and organic matter to seep into what would otherwise be dry soil. In other words, it created soils that were capable of growing plants, which meant that by working together with nature, we could start growing our own food. So we did just that. The necessity to move around, to forage for food, or find animals to hunt was no longer there, so we built permanent settlements for us. And now, since we no longer had to worry about where we were going to stay each night, we also no longer had to worry about population control. There is now a growing population, something which would have not been sustainable had we not come together to invent agriculture. It's amazing, really. Our entire lifestyle had been flipped upside down just from a simple little concept. You plant something, it grows. It took us 5 million years to come to this thought, but it only took 10,000 for it to become essentially common sense. We used to feast on whatever berries and nuts we could find each day, but now we knew exactly which berries and nuts we were eating every day. Agriculture had bought us so much free time that we started worrying about this thing called our social lives. With our newfound social life and increasing population, it was becoming harder to keep people in order, so we had to come together again to invent a government system. With our government systems came social hierarchies, and with that established, we had basically just built the world's first civilizations. With it also came symbolic language, math, architecture, art, engineering, and religion. These inventions became essential to getting us to the modern day. Without the first civilizations giving us these, we would not be here today. Not every civilization had the resources and technologies that others did, so we had to build trading networks to change that. Our trading networks also allowed people to transport knowledge from community to community, spread religion, and reach people that would otherwise be unreachable. We were able to achieve all of this just from working together, but we didn't realize that. We didn't realize how powerful human connection was. So working independently usually led to destruction. Because we spent 145,000 years as hunter-gatherers, our brains have been wired for competitive survival instincts. This means that each individual human or individual group wants their own independent sense of power, and this has caused historical tragedies such as war, slavery, and genocidal colonialism. This complex history of working against each other while also gradually interconnecting ourselves into one planetary network of exchange laid the groundwork for the next radical transformation in this awesome story, the modern revolution.
The modern revolution ushered a period of change and progress made possible by hundreds of thousands of years of collective learning. A valuable study and practice used frequently in the Montessori method. Our innate desire to understand drives us onward into redefining what is possible. The 20th century reshaped the political and social structure of the globe marked by new models of scientific understanding, unprecedented scopes of warfare, new modes of communication that would operate at nearly instant speeds, and new forms of art and entertainment. Realize how important it is to learn about the past and remember some as heroes in the progression of American society. Widely renowned names like Martin Luther King Jr. for his leadership in the Civil Rights Movement, which helped bring landmark legislation such as the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. Eleanor Roosevelt for her activism for women's rights and 12 years as the First Lady of the United States. George Washington Carver for his practices in science and revolutionary inventions such as making gasoline from peanuts. Let us not forget that progress often stems from immense struggle. As we work through our nation's history, recognize that in all of this evolution, the past of the United States is monumentally depressing. If you can, find some time in your week, 15 minutes, to learn about American colonization, westward expansion and manifest destiny, and the cultural genocide of indigenous people. Take a few more minutes to learn about the legislation passed to abolish slavery and the legal ratification of the Civil Rights Movement. There are things we should be proud of. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle influenced the creation of the Food and Drug Association, factory sanitation improvements, and child labor laws, passed by President Theodore Roosevelt. Monumental instances of activism, such as Brown versus the Board of Education and the March of the Little Rock Nine. Some of the most influential books used in modern education were published in the 20th century. The art and newfound emotion that arose from the music industry, the evolution of pop culture, and the parts of Hollywood that inspire us and bring the joy of movies and shows to our everyday lives. In 1969, we completely transcended the possibilities of human innovation. It took just 63 years between the invention of the airplane and getting to the moon. It took 200,000 years to get to bronze swords and tools, but just 400 more to create nuclear weapons. As terrifying as that is, it stands to exemplify human innovation and progression. As near as 20 years ago, a handheld television that could tell me anything I could ever want to know was entirely unheard of, and you probably all have one. Please imagine what could lie in store for us in the next 20 years. More often than not, good things come from persevering challenges. The quintessential relationship of history is between tragedy and progress, as they are integral to big change. To prepare for the possibilities of the future, we must observe the past and make our most educated guess on how to move forward. Pull motivation from the accomplishments of the past as they drive us blind or moderately prepared into the future.
It's not surprising that most people say something negative when asked about their feelings regarding the future. It's part of our human condition, the survival instinct, which is the need to keep ourselves safe. That negative feeling, in a way, ties us together. However, love and joy are abundant in this world. But because we are always looking for threats or dangers to avoid or prepare for, we tend to ignore them or become blind to them. The world as we know is ever-changing. Some of us may feel like there's no telling what tomorrow may bring us. Humans need order. We need organization. It is the sole reason we invented counting and numbers. Ask yourself this question. If you lived in a world without order, how would you feel? Would you feel disoriented? Stressed? I know I would feel that way. But the reality is, we are likely in the beginning stages of a new threshold in our story as humans. Some of the old ways of our world are no longer functional for us. It creates turbulence in the new ways of the world, try to work in unison. However, this turbulent time gives way to our new story, the one that we create now. There is no reason to believe that this 14 billion year story of creativity ends with us. There's no way it does. In a big way, the study of history is
the study of our future. The only difference is how we perceive it. The future, as a concept, is quite strange. Throughout history, humans have made predictions for the way of the future. These predictions were based on technologies and cultural norms of the time. To give an example, this was evident in the 1960s. In the US, the 60s were packed full of not only technological advancements, but also sociological advancements. The beginning of the decade began the anti-Vietnam War movement, which is more commonly known as the peace movement, the Civil Rights Act, and second wave feminism. The Apollo 11 mission was a success. We went to the moon for the first time. The moon landing opened a world, a galaxy of opportunities for us as a human race. Although different, all of these have something in common: the creative tendency of the changing universe, the need for change. Change is never an easy task, but we as humans are forever changing. It's something we have always done. We change to adapt to new environments. This tendency is from our universe. The universe brings different parts together to build new and complex entities that bring forth new possibilities. However, if history is the story of the future, what does that have to do with now? What does anything we have to do as humans have to do with the future? Like most things in our cosmic story, it's a mystery. We don't know what the future entails, but it's important to be optimistic. It took 14 billion years just for me to stand here and talk to you all. Isn't that amazing? For the first time in our human history, we have full access to our cosmos story. This story isn't just for academic purposes. Rather, this story will help give us our best chance to create a future. Our epic 14 billion year story of creativity, curiosity, and love has given us the wisdom to create a legacy. As we have seen in past generations, we create ideas that fit into our perfect vision of what it should look like. But it would be selfish of me not to mention the state of the world currently. We are living through a time of warfare, climate change, social injustice, economic turmoil, and so much more. Remember when I mentioned optimism? In today's world, it is more important than ever. The future as we know it is in our hands. We must protect it. The future, the earth, our mother. Her story is our story.
And that concludes our opening ceremony. Thank you all for coming. We encourage you to join us both in the MAC and the Woods Commons to view all of the big history exhibitions. These will be open until 6:15. Enjoy your night.